we're going to kick things off. We'll probably be adding some more folks as we go along, but my name is Michael Goldberg. And for those who we have not met before, I'm the executive director of the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship, Case Western Reserve. And I also am a professor at Weatherhead at the School of Management. It's great to have you for our Veale Institute CWRU Entrepreneurship Alumni Speaker Series. Just rolls off the tongue. It's been really wonderful to have these, and the Alumni Association of the university has been a great partner. So our friend Shammy Williams is on, and there may be, and Chris is on as well. So I know many of you are watching this via your Facebook feed and through the partnership with the Alumni Associations. I want to thank them for their partnership. And it's no coincidence, although we would have recruited Arnold anyway, but Arnold is the current president of the Case Western Reserve University Alumni Association. So he's been a great partner in his new role leading the association, and it's great to have him as part of the speaker series. So Melissa Heath, who is a student of ours for another week. Are you done with all your exams and papers?
I am done.
Was it just my grade is between you and graduating? Is that what?
No, you were actually one of the first grades I got back, so okay. Still waiting on 2 more, I think.
Okay, good. Well, Melissa, thank you for doing this. As I'm sure Arnold and Melissa will get into, they're in our Case Western Reserve basketball family. So when I knew Arnold was doing this, I thought Melissa would be a great moderator. So for those that are joining on Facebook, please feel free to put a question in the comment, and we'll be monitoring that, and we can feed them into Melissa. And we have a group here, and Melissa will also, in addition to asking her own questions, go to you. So if you have questions that you'd like to ask Arnold. So with that, I will flip it over to Melissa. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well in this pandemic. As Professor Goldberg said throughout this entire speaker session, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to post them in the chat or message me directly, and I'll make sure to touch on them as quickly as I see them. So today's speaker, we have Arnold Huffman, who is the founder and CEO of Yalo, and he is also the president of the Case Western Alumni Board. I will let him kind of introduce himself and kind of speak about how he's gotten to where he is today. I like to throw in a fun fact, and throughout his life, he's been the thrill seeker, from skydiving to bungee jumping, even paragliding. But he is also the father of 3 kids, and to this day he told me that his top thriller out of all of them was when his youngest son was born. It was actually unintentionally delivered at home, and he got the doctor on the phone, and the doctor actually walked him through the birth at home, and was able to stay calm in that stressful situation because of all the other experiences that he's had in his life. So I thought that was a fun fact to start off with. And I will let Arnold now speak to kind of introduce himself, Yalo, and kind of how he's gotten to where he is today.
Sure, thanks, Melissa. Yeah, so I've always kind of liked to push the envelope maybe a little bit, and so maybe having a baby at home was taking it a little too far, but that really just came down to being a third kid and us being very nonchalant about getting to the hospital. And next thing you know, he was upon us. So, appreciate being here. A quick shout out to Doug and Michael for hosting these events. I think you guys are doing a great job. The content and both in the speakers, but also the volume that you guys are collecting, I think has been really impressive of how much you're putting together here, especially at a time when folks have extra time in their hands to engage and participate and learn from some of these things. So I think that's been a great outlet and use of some of these channels for Case Western. So pretty excited about that. I graduated in '93, chemical engineering undergrad. I am far away from that position these days. I have nothing to do with chemical engineering anymore. I couldn't even do an engineering equation for you if I tried, likely. So I did play hoops, as noted earlier, for Coach Sudek, who you've probably seen, you know, his likeness in the gym there, the bust that's there for him. He was a great coach. We loved playing for him, and really enjoyed my time on the team there. And then I was a Sigma Chi fraternity brother when I was there as well. So still have a few elements from those days from being in the fraternity. I'd say the biggest takeaway from playing hoops for me was just the team camaraderie. I came in with 4 other freshmen that all of us played together for the 4 years, and we are all still very close friends, and as well as an extended group of us that still get together. Actually, during this time of COVID, we've actually done 4 of our own Zoom chats together to catch up and see how life is faring for everybody. So we're also very close. We do go on trips together and stay very well connected. So I definitely appreciated time, getting to know those guys and still staying close friends with them. So, when I left Case, I was a chemical engineer. By the time I got to being a senior, I realized that I didn't want to be an engineer. And so it was a little bit late to change tracks at that point. So one of my fraternity brothers actually invited me to at the time it was called Anderson Consulting information session, as they have them on campus in your senior year to go meet these companies. At that point, I'd already had a few chemical engineering interviews. Wasn't too jazzed about how that was shaping up. So I had no idea what consulting was, who Anderson Consulting was, but I went with my fraternity brother, Dave Jarris, by the way, and attended the session. And what I found was a completely different lifestyle that would really accommodate what I very much appreciated in my career, which was around problem solving, and regardless of how you do it. So that allowed me to move away from really chemistry and engineering, and delved into starting work in consulting, which at that time for me was learning COBOL, of all things, to code, which also was shop floor systems. So working in manufacturing locations out in factories in less glamorous places than most, because factories are never in a major city. So doing COBOL in shop floor or manufacturing lines was an interesting start to a career. So from there, did continue to progress through the ranks. That was right around the time that SAP became a big deal. For those of you who are familiar with that term, I was, fortunate/unfortunate to not necessarily be in the SAP track in terms of skill set. So I didn't do SAP. I was building systems that connected to SAP. And because of that, the SAP projects were very huge by nature. I was able to, early in my career, be working on smaller things where I got to do more things. I got my hands involved on different elements of a project besides just the coding and testing. So very early, I was writing statements of work or contracts with our customer for our small team, and learning from that experience of managing client expectations, delivering to their requirements, how to manage, if we were off a little bit, how do we bring that back together and deliver what the client's looking for. So that was kind of early in my Accenture days. Moved on and kind of never got into the SAP track. I always kind of was involved in manufacturing clients, having worked at chemical factories, steel factories, and that was pretty much it in terms of the industries I got to delve into. So I was not in anything glamorous from financial services or retail or anything like that. Having got to spend some time in some amazing places like, Midland, Michigan, Wilmington, Delaware, Deer Park, Texas, Indiana Harbor, Indiana, which is just outside of Gary. So, you know, I learned quite a bit from being in those situations and working with not a corporate clientele either, right? So the folks we were working with were in the shop floor, very blue collar, and the last person they wanted to hear from was a young recent college graduate about how they were going to have to change their job every day by using a computer, which is the last thing they wanted to do in the early to mid 90s. So, so that was the Accenture time. Kind of spent 10 years there doing the Accenture thing, traveled quite a bit, especially towards the end of my tenure there. I traveled about 5 days a week when I was out in Wilmington. That was a pretty rough go on the flight at 6 a.m. Central Time, which meant getting up at 3:30 a.m. Sunday night / Monday morning to hit the road. So got off the road, went to a software company because and that transition was interesting, having gone from consulting to doing software. The reason the software company hired me was because I understood the mentality of the consultant, and the consultants are typically using technology or software out there to solve a problem for a client. And so hiring me from consulting over to the software company was really designed to help partner with the consulting firms so that they would recommend our software. So I went into a partnership job or otherwise called alliances, worked with partners all around the world over the years there. And that would say there, I got a front row seat to sales and kind of how negotiating and positioning, not consulting, but products with customers. So it was a nice switch from doing consulting to talking about products and the sales aspect of that and the positioning and negotiating aspect of that, both with customers as well as those partners. So did that. We got acquired by a German software company. So my new bosses were in Frankfurt, Germany. The last year I worked for them, I went to Frankfurt 13 times in 12 months. And so now I was back on the road again quite a bit, and basically got out of that gig to join Rosetta. Rosetta, actually, this was the merger of two companies, Brulant and Rosetta. Brulant was actually founded by or ran by a local guy and Case Western grad named Brad Wirtz. And Brad and I knew each other from Case and even before that. So I jumped ship from doing software to the actual marketing world. And Rosetta was a marketing agency that I joined in 2010 after the software run. So learned a lot in the 3 years I was with them. I was doing business development, helping them sell more projects. And after that, I figured we got acquired actually in the middle of that tenure, my tenure there, and the new company that took over had very different views about what we were going to sell and how we were going to sell them. So I opted to exit at that point. And basically their ruling was we only want to sell $1 million and plus sized opportunities. So that was going to be a challenge for us because we weren't really geared or prepared for that. We were selling smaller deals and then growing them into much bigger relationships with these clients. So I, at that point, knew that because I was the head of sales and business development, knew that we were receiving lots of RFPs and requests to do work in that smaller window. And basically my attitude was, somebody's going to do this work. It might as well be me. So that's when I made the switch out of Rosetta to start Yalo. And that event came 3 months after the sun showed up in our bathroom. So we had 3 kids at that point, a very young baby, and my wife wasn't quite sure that was the right time. But as everybody says, there's never a perfect time to start your own business. So we let her rip and been doing it ever since. So We're in year 8 as an organization, and if you're curious, Yalo means soul in Fiji. And the reason I came up with that name is that if you ever start your own company and you do any of the legwork to see what names are available to try to fit the vibe of your company and what you're offering, you'll quickly realize there are no English words left to name anything. All of them have been trademarked, and or the URLs are all gone. So, and combination of English words. It's even hard to find 2 words melded together that's even available. So I decided to offshore it to a foreign language that I had the good fortune of being to Fiji one time on vacation and just liked the culture. So I started searching for words in their dictionary that fit the idea of what we wanted to create. So that's how we came up with Yalo. So that's a little bit about my background and how we got to this point, and how I got from chemical engineering on one end to now doing marketing on the other end, which is a far cry from doing differential equations.
Yes. Thank you so much for that background. I think, as everyone's noticed, you definitely have a well-rounded background across many different sectors. What do you think some of the pros, and I'll say cons, but really like struggles that you faced having a non-traditional business background when creating Yalo, coming up with the idea and kind of building it all out?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, like I said, there's never a good time to do it. So you just kind of got to move some of that fear out of the way, out of your mind. Secondly, I would say do it with your eyes wide open, in the sense of don't be afraid of the things that you have to do, right? Just take a steady course and research. With the internet, there's just about nothing that you can't read up on, learn enough about to be dangerous and figure out how to get started on. So, just having a very eyes wide open, be willing to research and have an open mind on taking on those things and learning from them, so that the experience of those things. So a lot of other business owners I talk to, when I first started out in this, complain about the stuff that's in the back office, right? So a lot of people start a business because they're good at something, and that's the thing they want to do a lot of, right? Whether they're a designer or a writer or a lawyer or whatever it is. Well, when you start that business, you'll quickly realize that only maybe half of your time, maybe a little bit more of that, especially at the outset, is what you actually get to do. There's all these other things you have to do to support the business, from sales to payroll, to finances, to legal things, to insurance, healthcare, and even back at the very beginning of that, just setting up the company. So creating an LLC, setting up your tax ID, getting an address, et cetera, et cetera. So again, research it all, do it with an open mind, that it's a learning experience, and everything that you're going through will be beneficial in some way. I've always appreciated the opportunity to learn about these things, rather than just hiring somebody to do it for me. So I learned a lot from doing those. I'd actually started a small business that we did for about 1.5 years, me and another guy. So I learned a little bit from that experience on how to set something up. And when it came time to do this one, I was able to do that pretty quickly. So that's one of the things I would say is don't get frustrated, keep an open mind, and take it all in as a learning experience from the process. And don't get frustrated by the things you don't get to do, the things you have to do because you're not good at them. Again, the more you accept it and the more you embrace it, the more you're going to learn from it, and you'll become better at the finance aspects or the sales aspects or whatever it is. So another one that I will say I've had some first person learnings from is be very careful about partnerships. Everybody says it's a a lot of people will tell you that, and you'll scratch your head why, like, hey, me and my friend have been great, we've known each other forever, or we think alike, whatever it might be. That may all be the case, but the reality is there's something behind, there's always going to be something you don't know, that at some point that's going to come to an intersection, and learning that could become the impasse to that partnership. And so I had that challenge. We had a very good family, friends. Our friends were friends. Our wives were friends. He and I initially started down that road and ended up having to separate because of it, because we had different ideas. We started out on the same page very quickly, and luckily within a year, I learned that and we figured that out. And so it was only 1 year to unravel rather than multiple years to unravel. So since then, I've been the sole owner, and to this point, and at least starting out, I would encourage to really take a hard, deep look at if you were going to consider having a partner in your business.
Do you think that's something that you might be interested in the future?
Yeah, so, as we continue to grow, absolutely. One of the things that I've always considered, especially coming from Anderson Consulting, which turned into Accenture, right? That was a partnership. All of the partners that work there are all partial owners in the organization. And certainly there's a value in it. One of the things I would say is, as you build your team, the best employees you can hire are those who treat it as if it's their own business, right? And by having people or making people partners in a partnership is really, the validation or the reality of that. So the opportunity to create a partnership with our employees is certainly on the radar for us. And the other thing that we're doing, we just closed on our first acquisition as an organization to add people to our fold, is that as we continue to do that, the expectation will be that those other targets that we acquire will want to take partner ownership as well. So that's certainly going to be something we'll have to tackle and restructure from sole ownership to a partnership here, I would say in the next 12 or 24 months.
And when you were discussing your background, you definitely have a lot of business development skills and experience in other companies. How have those experiences in your past played a role in crafting and growing Yalo to the successful company that it has become today?
Yeah, so when I started this, obviously I would go back. I have zero real educational training in being a marketer, right? Really everything I learned from marketing was just through my various career elements that I've had. So all of that kind of rolled into understanding, marketing at the end of the day is making connection with an audience, right? And so what's the best way to do that in terms of communication, user experience, visuals, whatever. So the business development element very much aligns to that, because as you're building relationships and talking to clients about what you can do for them, whether it's a product or a service, you're solving a problem of theirs. And so the marketing side of that is getting them to recognize that you could help them with their problem. And on the sales side of that is the opportunity to actually talk to them and show them how you can solve that problem. So the other thing I would say about being in business development, and as I started this business and not being classically trained marketer, whether that's having done design or a UX, a wireframe type person, or even though I was a COBOL developer back in the day, I couldn't code anything in today's languages, forget about it, right? So I understand the logic of it, but I don't know the languages themselves. So one of the keys I would say also in building the company is that I don't actually, other than being a project manager, I can't actually do any of the work. So I need people to be able to execute the work. And so my primary function is to go find work for the team, right? And put them in position to be successful and do what they do so well, which is, project management, design, development, testing, and meeting, solving a problem for our clients and meeting their expectation in that delivery. So I'd say that's a key aspect of that I see, again, a lot of entrepreneurs who have started their own organization tend to get drawn back into doing the work, and that prevents you from growing your company because you're spending too much time in the hands-on side of it.
And not to shift gears completely, but I have received a couple questions about the current environment and the impact that the coronavirus has had on your company as a whole, and how you've kind of dealt with it and the implications that it's had on your companies and employees.
Yeah, so it's obviously been a stressful time for both personally and commercially for everybody. For us, we've had a good fortune of a couple things. One, we've built a great team. I take a lot of pride in the people we have in our organization, their willingness, their capability, their attitude, and everything they do every day. So having them in place has really enabled me to focus on the problem at hand, which is, the C-19 situation. It definitely has created a lot more work from being focused on growth and business development to now figuring out how to navigate a multitude of other things. So one of those things is, as the government's been rolling out new stimulus packages, staying ahead of the curve on the information as it relates to that for, if anybody's following these things, like the payroll protection plan loans that were rolled out. The next one that's coming up is the Main Street Lending Program, which has 3 different components to it. So, reading all of that stuff, following the news about all of that stuff has been a whole new layer of work that, 8 weeks ago wasn't there. And I don't know that I would have the time or capacity to be able to focus on those things again without having the team that we have in place. So fortunately, leading up to this, we were able to build a great team that can handle their day-to-day business, and me not having to be that involved with solving those types of problems, but now being able to focus on solving the business challenges created by C-19. So we went through the PPP, as it's called, the Paycheck Protection Plan that the government rolled out. We were fortunate to be approved and funded by that. So that certainly gives us a little mental relief and break from and keeping our employees in place. I know a lot of organizations had to take on even harder decisions of furloughing or laying people off in this interim. And fortunately, we have not had to do that. We were able to continue to work through and up until the point we got the loan. And now the loan will sustain us through basically the end of June. And so that's a positive. The other thing that's helped us through this period is we've got our client base isn't a singular industry. So a lot of folks, again, when you're getting advice from different folks on starting a business, some folks are very intent on singularly focusing on either a specific industry or a specific capability so that you can be the best at that. I've never subscribed to that. I'm much more of we're smart people and we can solve a multitude of problems. So let's do that well. And that's what we focus on rather than being the company that does just this. So because of that, we have a diverse set of skills and things that we can solve for clients. And we also have a diverse set of clients that we get to do that for. So that being said, with the COVID situation, some of our clients have been severely impacted. And so we've, as I call it, taken a few hits in terms of work either slowing down, pausing, or disappearing altogether, which is the most painful hit. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have clients that are in the food space, the hygiene space, and in financial services industries that are going full tilt, right? Their businesses are running much faster than they ever had. So on those cases, we're keeping extremely busy. On other cases, we don't. But that diversity of client base has kind of helped us level out the situation as well.
And we do have one question from Igor. So I don't know if Igor wants to come on and introduce himself and then ask his question as well. Feel free.
Sure. Thank you so much, Melissa. Hi, Arnold. I'm currently an integrated study student at Case, pursuing my master's in accountancy. And my question sort of ties off of what you just said. You mentioned how this is a huge change for really everybody. So how do you personally like the whole working from home thing, and how do you think it's going to affect the workforce as a whole?
Yeah, so a great question, and I love that question because, as I like to say, I think the world's just catching up to us. We've actually operated this way since day one. Kind of maybe goes back to a little bit of the philosophy on running a very minimizing your costs while you're running your business. So we've never gone out and had a huge footprint for office space. We make up for the lack of space by getting together in different ways. So there's challenges that are created by working remotely and disparately like we do as it relates to culture, and I'll talk about that separately. But we've always worked independently. Like you said, the perspective, especially here in Atlanta, why waste an hour each way in traffic when you could be getting, work done, right? And solving and supporting your clients. So I've never had much interest in just making people come to work to do work. Much like I don't buy into you need to wear a suit and tie to get work done either. Right, it's your brain that solves the problem, not what you're wearing or where you're sitting. And so we've always worked that way. Within a week of the COVID-19 shelter in place stuff coming about, we sent emails to all our clients kind of describing, the fact that, look, this has been no change to us. The day that shelter in started, we didn't change anything. We already had all the technology in place of how we would communicate amongst the team, how we communicate with our clients. Half of our clients are not in Atlanta or Cleveland, which is where our team members are anyway. We've got clients in Dallas, down in Florida, up and down the Eastern Seaboard. So we've always been able to operate in a remote situation. And so we lost no efficiency, no effectiveness, no level of quality in the work we were doing for our clients. So, if anything, now when I can't even ask my team to come to the office to do a brainstorm session, which usually would result in some eye rolls from them about having to come to the office. So now I can't even ask them to come to the office. So it's all good for them. But the key, and I think to the second part of your question is like, how will this change life going forward? The way because we have the technology and we've had highly skilled people in place, but the third thing you have to have in place is trust. We all, because we're a small team, but mighty, as I say to our clients, it's because we all are, linked arm in arm, even though we're not sitting next to each other. And we do that through the use of the technology, through heavy communications, whether it's voice or digital, and everybody knows when everybody's working. So we have a high level of trust in each other that work is getting done as we ask people to do things or people form together to get something done, that all of that can happen without necessarily sitting next to each other because of that third component, which is a high level of trust in each other to do our part. So how the world will change, I think, there were lots of organizations that really refused working in this way for a long time because they don't have that trust. They don't believe their people will be on the grind and getting their work done and staying accomplished without them seeing them physically or looking over their shoulder to make sure that's the case. So I think, the advent of current technologies that are out there, and now with everybody's been forced to do it this way, the realization is, people are responsible. People are getting their work done, and that trust level, I think, is increasing. And in coming out of this, we don't know yet what the government's going to say as far as social distancing rules about workspaces and stuff like that, that you may still have the same footprint, but you've got to spread everybody out in your office. So now you've got to go to some version of rotating hours, or certain people are in one week and the next group is in the next week, or half a day for half a day, or whatever it might be. However that turns out to be, the trust has to be there that the folks are getting their work done, even though they're not sitting in an office.
And actually, on a related note, we had another question from Bob Fowler. I'm not sure if you'd like to come on and introduce yourself and ask your question as well.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Arnold, how's it going? Thanks for being here again. It's good to see you. My question was kind of similar, but to kind of build off that, do you think you'll see more startups switching to what you guys have already done at Yalo with a remote situation when this crisis is over?
I think so. Look, and I would say, especially the startups, you're one of the key things I consider from an entrepreneur standpoint. You'll always hear the story of fail fast, spend lots of money, right? Kind of develop and get over the hump really fast. I did the exact opposite, right? I didn't hire anybody for 2 years. It was me and a bunch of contractors acting like we were a company, and positioning ourselves as that, right? So I did that for a couple of reasons. One, and not the least of which, my wife would never let me just go lose a bunch of money before we became something. So, the reality was, look, I have to build this from scratch and build this from the ground up and do it cost effectively without running out, renting a big office space, hiring a bunch of people early. So I would say, don't believe the hype in terms of, this whole scale fast, fail fast model. Unless it's a closing window, that's obvious. But, the opportunity, especially in our space, is, look, you can build this smart, you can build this cost effectively. And if you're doing so, you're going to make smart decisions, like don't go out and spend a whole bunch of money on a 5-year lease that you technically can't afford.
Another question that we had coming in, I myself am from New Jersey, so I can vouch the economy here is not the best circumstances here. But one question that was asked, Georgia is making national news with the reopening of their economy. What does that look like? And are things getting better for better business-wise?
So I think there's two parts to that. While we're opening as an economy, the parts that are opening are really the consumer side of things, restaurants. Well, ironically, the first things to open here in Georgia were the tattoo parlors and bowling alleys and salons. So if you were looking for a tattoo while you were bowling, you were in business back on April 27th. But, the restaurants were the next thing to open, and that's all consumer type stuff, right? My clients here in Georgia, from a commercial standpoint, large organization, nobody's going back to work yet. So even though the economy is opening here in Georgia, again, on the consumer side, the commercial or corporate side of those things are not back yet. And I don't anticipate those really to come back to full swing until at best June, maybe July, sort of thing. And even at that, back to what I was saying earlier, it might be on rotations. Certain groups of people come in for a week and then a different group is the following week and things like that. So it certainly corporately won't be back to normal here in May. And even after that, could have some altered version of normal going forward.
Awesome. And if anyone wanted to jump in and ask any questions, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, we can keep moving along with the questions in the chat. Okay. I think one question that was in the chat was, even with all of your business experience, have you ever had trouble gaining respect or credibility? Or how do you build potential customers' trust when negotiating a sale?
So I would say the answer to that second part, building trust, right? It was a great book Malcolm Gladwell wrote. I think it was his first book, and it's escaping me the name of it. But like, what you have to build is the belief in the customer that you can solve their problem, right? And I would say the first and foremost way of doing this, and my team gets tired of me saying this, but it's listening, right? To be a great listener will close the gap on just about any distance between you and a customer. And in order to do that, you have to ask good questions, not just a lot of questions, but good, insightful questions that are going to get you to the answer / resolution of what you're trying to solve for them, right? So, and so you have to be listening to what they're saying, formulating those questions as they're speaking, and not just hearing it, and not just running through, here's the 15 questions I'm going to ask, but be very pivotable in what they're saying and responding with the right questions. Again, working your way through some kind of decision tree to get to how you're going to solve that problem. And when we get RFPs, I've always said to my team, our first best impression we can make with a potential customer is the questions we ask. The other guys, right? Sure, they probably have their rote list of questions they're going to fire off. That's not going to help them. Ours can be insightful and to the point. The second thing is, we're not going to ask 50 questions or even 30 questions or even 20 questions. We're going to ask 5, maybe 8. That's as far as we go. Because the other 22 or 32 or whatever it is that the other guys are asking, two things. One, if they have answers to those, we're going to get those answers anyway. So why bother asking the same question somebody else is already going to ask? And then two, our questions will come across as more thoughtful. And three, actually, the third thing is asking 50 questions. If they had answers to all 50 questions, they would be doing this project themselves. They wouldn't need us, right? If they had all the answers, they wouldn't be asking us. So our best job in the very beginning of meeting with a prospect is to do a great job of listening, understanding the problem, ask great questions to try to figure out how we're going to solve that problem. And then from there, I think we've earned the trust of the customer. And then, building on that over time is how we then stay with that customer. And I can tell you that a lot of our customers become retainer clients of ours just because of the value and the help we provide month over month on a variety of things. So there's another aspect to that my former boss at the software company, who was a salesman through and through, and I learned a ton from him, that he used to say is that being a salesperson is a little bit of being a chameleon, in the sense of your job is to relate to that customer. So the opportunity to relate to them is a couple of different things. One, think like them. So having done your homework, see where they've worked at, what kind of business are they in. So, and trying to understand who they are so you can think like them. A little bit of talk like them in terms of using similar language that they're comfortable with. And even, act like them in the sense of, if they're a relaxed organization, then don't wear a 3-piece suit to the meeting, right? You're gonna throw them off. So think like them, act like them, and talk a little bit like them in a way of really creating a connection between you and that person you're trying to develop a sales relationship with.
Awesome. And I think we had one question from Todd, if he wanted to introduce himself and then ask his questions.
Yep.
No.
Todd Schwartzinger. Full disclosure, my question, I worked for Arnold about 15 years ago. And Arnold, I'd love to hear about 20 years, yeah. I'd love to hear about how some of the people that have worked for you have impacted the success in your career. And then two, the importance of setting up a strong team dynamic. And you mentioned a little bit about this and how you're navigating this current issue, but the importance, I know from working with you, the importance of building a strong team is critical, but would love to hear a little bit about how you think about that.
Yeah, look, another quote from a former boss of mine, it was like, you want to build a team that will storm the beach with you. And, really, if you just take that thought process and mentality around the folks that you're going to battle with, right, in terms of work and supporting your clients, that's really all you need to know. And how are you going to do that, right? It's being personable with them, caring about them, and thinking about their own personal needs and challenges, getting the group together to get to know each other, right? And for them to bond and spend time together. Again, since we don't spend time in an office, our ability to do that is really based on us holding our own events and getting together on our own accord at various places. And because we're in two different places, Cleveland and Atlanta, we've got to bring people together to make that happen. So I do think that that's an invaluable component of teamwork and building camaraderie and relationships. Maybe that comes from having played basketball all these years, but I think that's the key piece. And some folks, some days may or may not be interested in going out, but you got to be a little bit of the aggressor, if you will, and make sure that everybody gets out, because it's just like anything else. If they don't participate, they don't get out of it what they don't put into it. So sometimes somebody might be a little bit tired or whatever, but you got to nudge them along to come along and make sure we get everybody to participate. And the value of everybody's engagement and participation in that is what creates the bond and the link and the trust that I talked about of working together. So, and as the business owner, especially for us to get together, you have to be willing to spend some money, right? When we get together and we go out to dinner and we go out drinking and we go to baseball events or renting a boat to go cruise around in Lake Lanier down here for a day, right? Like, that takes money, and you can't be overzealous, I guess, in terms of hoarding the money, right? Like, the point is they're helping you and supporting your customers as well as the organization and doing a great job. They deserve to be taken care of and treated well. And like I said, wined and dined just like a customer. So we try to do that, whether it's even small groups or the whole group, and build, to stay connected and build that camaraderie through going out and doing fun things together.
And I think we have time for about one more question. Someone asked a question about your role as the president of the Case Western Alumni Association and kind of what you wanted to accomplish and the role you played in that.
Yeah, appreciate that. When I first got invited to join the board, it was really just built on me having hosted the basketball team here in Atlanta for 11 years. Now it's been 11 years, but at the time I got invited to the board, we were probably 6-7 years into it. I was kind of dabbling, if you will, in terms of having a relationship with the university that way. The board, though, getting involved gives me a much broader purview of all the things going on at the university, which is pretty interesting. Gives me a reason to go back. I very much enjoy coming back to campus with my team being partially in Cleveland. All of it just sort of works because I do come back to Cleveland pretty frequently. When I do come to Cleveland to see the team, I also make a point to get on campus as well. So, and when I'm on campus working with Brad, who's the alumni VP, right, in terms of finding out who else can I meet, who else can I sit down with from the university. And really our goal is, from my perspective as the president, goal of one, promoting the Alumni Association as an asset to the university. Melissa, you're soon to be an alumni, so we'll look forward to you being part of the 110,000 plus. But we're an asset to the university in terms of whether it's a sounding board, input on certain things. With Barbara leaving, being able to provide input and thoughts on the new search that's in process for Barbara's replacement. So things like that. My goal in working with Brad is really to raise the visibility of the Alumni Association as a valued input and sounding board to the university. Secondly, I think, as an alumni group, one of our key requirements needs to be a better job of even connecting as Spartans amongst us, right? Being connected on LinkedIn, being connected on events like this, which is why I appreciate what Doug and Michael are doing, really helps us to be a stronger force as a group together and supporting the university. So having better connections is a big goal of mine. The other one is raising the visibility of athletics at the university. You guys, some of you know, right? Participating in sports on top of the demanding workload that Case Western provides is extra work, right? And so, but it's all for the love of the game. Nobody's going pro out of Case Western on any sports anytime soon, but that would be great if we were able to recruit a kid like that. That would be awesome. But yeah, the reality is we all play sports for the love of the game and the love of our teammates and the camaraderie. And I think, again, with 110,000 people in our alumni group, the opportunity for them to participate in games in Atlanta or wherever they might be, to support that. So that was my second goal. And my third goal is the entrepreneurial program, having connected with Todd and Michael early on when this was formulating. I do think that there's an amazing set of people graduating from Case every year. And whether you knew them or not, you walk the halls with them. And those people are going on and doing some really amazing things. The easy ones are, Craig's from Craigslist or the guy who wrote Gmail and things like that everybody knows. But beyond that, especially this program that Michael and Doug are doing is getting sharing those stories of who all these other folks are that are doing some pretty incredible and fun things out there. And for those reasons, should draw more students to Case, should bond us together as a group. And look, I can't change the weather in East Cleveland, and I can't change the dorms that have been built years ago on campus, but we can certainly know each other better and understand the stories of all the graduates and the accomplishments of them coming out of the university to be proud of.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak to everyone. Thank you. I wanted to thank everyone for coming to this speaker session. I didn't get a chance to put my LinkedIn link in the chat, but it's just my first name and last name. So please feel free to connect. But at this time, I'll throw it back to Professor Goldberg to wrap it up.
Right. Thanks, Melissa. You did a great job moderating. It's funny that you and so many of our students are on the verge. Unfortunately, we're not all going to be together for graduation. Usually I'm the name reader at the Weatherhead graduation. So, particularly with our international student base, pronouncing the names of students at graduation is something I look forward to every year, but don't get to do this year. But it has been a tough semester, and unfortunately we don't get to celebrate with our students the way we formally do. But Melissa, thank you for doing that. And Arnold, and I see now Allison, your predecessor president, is on. We really, A, appreciate you participating today. B, I think the goals of the Alumni Association align so well with what we're trying to do at Veale. One plug I'll put in, we were talking about it for a few minutes before we get started. We are looking for opportunities for students to work on entrepreneurship-related projects. Particularly for those, we have a number of folks, students that are on the call whose internships or international travel plans have fallen through. So we're looking to partner an alumni that are working as entrepreneurs and might be willing to host a student. We are funding that, their stipend from the university. So this is free work from students, but more so than the work, it's really the opportunity to get experience. And so I've posted a few things on Facebook and LinkedIn, and if people need more information on that. We do actually, Arnold, when you were talking about the kinds of entrepreneurs we want to profile together as an alumni association and as Veale, the next two we have this week are two really interesting examples. Tomorrow at the same time, we have Aaron Luo, who is a Weatherhead grad who I'd never met before, and he lives in New York City and runs a luxury retailer, very high-end bags, kind of like bags that you can, well, when gyms are back open again, sort of transition from going to work and the gym. So Aaron will talk about what it's like to be in luxury retailing in the face of COVID-19, which will be interesting. So that's tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And then on Thursday at 1 o'clock, probably some of our better known, I call them our poster children of entrepreneurship. So in addition to Craig Newmark of Craigslist and Paul Buchheit from Gmail, many of you may have read in November of last year, 4 CASE alums, Stan Garber, Alex, Chris, and Andrew were 4 founders of a company called Scout RFP. A couple of them started a company on campus when they were here called Onesys. Scout RFP sold for $540 million to Workday in November. So well-timed before the crisis. So all 4 of the founders will join us in conversation, and actually Igor will be their moderator. So I told Igor to make sure he was here today to take notes on moderating for Melissa. So that's just this week, and we've got a bunch of other things coming up. We do have a mix. It's predominantly alums, but we have some non-alums. Actually, we just confirmed an alum of Miami, Todd's alma mater, named Adam Bain, who's a Clevelander who used to be the COO of Twitter. So keep the suggestions coming. I know Allison and Nikki have sent me some suggestions of alums because we really want to profile folks that you haven't heard of and maybe some folks that you have heard of. And we'll keep doing these sessions, particularly as folks are stuck at home, although Arnold, the number of Zoom sessions you're doing in a day sort of ambitious. Maybe for you we need like a walking session to get you away from your computer. But again, Arnold, thank you for doing this and for everything you're doing for the university. And we'll look forward to raising a glass together when we're back in person, hopefully on campus this fall or whenever that'll be.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it, Michael and Melissa. Good questions, and everybody else who joined. Last thing I'll wrap up with is just to say, whatever you guys decide to do from being an entrepreneur is do it with passion. Like if you're not passionate about it and not owning it, it's hard to convince the folks who are going to be working for you to do the same, right? So you have to believe, you have to have that drive and that passion, and through that, by staying consistent with that. And with that passion, the team will come along. So you've got to own it, and if you're going to start your own, it's got to be you.
Great words and advice to end on. Well, thanks everybody, and hope to see you at future events, maybe as soon as tomorrow. Have a great day.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks Arnold. Thanks Melissa.
Stay safe.